In this screencast, I'm going to show you how to import and export data. We're going to talk about how to import data files that are not in MATLAB format using the read table function. Then I'm going to show you briefly how to export data using the write table function. And then for more complex cases where the data in a text file might be more arbitrarily formatted, we can use low-level MATLAB functions like the TextScan function, as well as fopen and fclose. So there are many different ways to represent data in files. So here are three common file types. One is tab delimited files with a .txt file extension. Here the different columns corresponding to different variables in the data are separated by tabs. Comma separated value files with a .csv file extension have columns separated by commas. And finally, another popular format is Excel files with a .xls or xlsx extension. So if you use the links on the website, you can actually download three different file samples, sample data files, and you should save those locally to your directory. And so we're talking about the files sampledata1.txt, sampledata1.csv, and sampledata1.xlsx. So the text files, you can actually bring those up in your MATLAB editor window. So here's the contents of this sampledata1.txt file. And this is data from a working memory experiment. The details of the experiment are not relevant to us. This experiment produces data files with 4 columns. The first column is the ID of the participant, represented by a number. There's a column that indicates if the response on a trial was correct or not. There's a response time column, RT, that contains the duration or the time it took for the participant to respond. And there's a column with a string containing a description of the stimulus that was shown to a subject. Now, as you can see here, the different columns are separated by white space, and there are actually tabs that are separating different columns. Now, you can also have a comma separated value format. That's the file with the CSV extension. That one has commas in between. And there's also the Excel file that you can bring up by using an Excel program, and it has the exact same information, but just organized in a way that Excel can read it. Now, MATLAB has this very useful function called read table. And read table can read in many different file formats. So in these 3 lines, this is an example of how you can read in text files that are tab separated. So we take our sampledata1.txt file, and so this is the name of the file and the string file name, and then you call this function simply with the name of the file. Now the result is a new type of data structure that we have not discussed yet. It's a table data structure. So let's see what MATLAB produces. I'm going to run these first 3 lines of code. I'm going to press the Control key and the Enter key simultaneously, and that will execute this section as given that is yellow highlighted. So it's now running this code, and as a result, I should now have this new data type T in memory. Now, in a separate screencast, I'm going to show you how to process tables. But here's a way to show the first 10 rows of this T table to the screen. So essentially, a table is organized like a matrix. So you have an index for the rows. So here I'm talking about the first 10 rows. And you have an index for the columns. So I'm taking all columns here. And the results here shown on the screen is this subset of the table with the four different columns, also with the names of the columns. So the nice thing of this read table function is that it will take the variable names as given in the first row of this data file, and these will become the names of the columns here in the table. And that's very useful to process the data. The other lines here just show basically identical commands to read in the comma separated value format. You just change the file extension and you can read again into a table format using the exact same function. You can also read in Excel files just by changing the name of the file and just read in the Excel file. And the result should be identical if the underlying sort of data contents are the same. So now let's make a change to our underlying data and then save this new data to a file. Let's make a very simple change. Let's change the units of the response time column to seconds as opposed to milliseconds. So again, I'll have a separate screencast where I'll go into tables, but tables, they look very much like structures as well as matrices. So you can actually address the column RT by just saying t.rt, the name of the column, and the new values in that column will be old values divided by 1000. Okay, I've now converted to seconds, and let's see what this new table looks like. Yeah, you can see that the values are now expressed in seconds. And now let's export this table to an Excel file. You can use the write table function in MATLAB to do this. So I can say write this table to, let's say, this file. You can give it any name you want. And now I'm saving it with an extension XLSX. So that's the sort of most recent format for Excel files. And then I should also pass the table itself in this function. So there are two arguments here. So the first argument is the table that you want to save or export, and then the name of the file. And now we're going to check if we can read in this file with Excel. So let me open up the file that we just saved. So there it is, MATLAB saved into this file. Let's open it. And yes, so as you can see, now we have this response time column that has the new values now expressed in seconds. So the read table function is very useful to read in many different file types, either text files or Excel files. And the write table is very useful to save to either text formatted files or Excel files. Now, in some cases, the read table function cannot be used to import data, and you might have to use more low-level MATLAB functions. Now, one way to achieve the exact same result of reading in the sample data text file, but without using the read table command, is by using fopen, textscan, and fclose. So here's an example script. So again, we have the name of the file assigned to the string file name. And now in this line, we're opening this file, or the name of the file is indicated by this string. We're opening it for reading, as indicated by this parameter. The R stands for read. And the result of this function is a handle to a file. This is the representation or some link to the file that's being opened. And now on this line, we're importing the data into a cell array C. And the function is the textscan function. And it's a very flexible function for importing sort of arbitrarily formatted text files. Now this function can take on a number of inputs. The first input is that ID of the text file, the handle to the text file that we retrieved from the fopen function, so FID. Then we have a string that contains the the representation of the data format. So we have 4 columns in this sample data text file. The first 3 columns are floating point numbers. You could also read them in as integers, but it's easier for MATLAB to just represent any numeric data by double precision numbers, so that you can use the %f format to read it in as double precision numbers. And then the last column is a string, so that contain the stimulus type. I'm ending this text scan with this header line argument. So I have one header line that contains the names of the variables. I'm telling text scan to basically skip that first line in terms of reading the numeric data. And then this line, fclose fid, closes the file again. Now, if I set a breakpoint here and run this program, the result is a cell array. So I have 4 columns in this cell array, and each of these has 192 rows. And so the first column has the first column of the text file. The second column of the cell array has the second column of the text file, etc. If you want to convert this back to a table format, you could first extract the various columns of this cell array. So now I've passed the first column of the cell array to ID, and that contains 192 values for the IDs. And the second one I've assigned this to correct, and the third one to RT, and the fourth one to stim type. And now if we want to convert this back to a table format, that's very useful to work with data. I can call the table function, and now I'm calling it with 4 inputs. And these are the 4 columns that I want to combine into a single table. And the result is this table. And as you can see, it has 192 rows and 4 columns. And if I just inspect the first 10 rows of this column, I get the same result as before by using the read table command. Now in this example, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to use the text scan function to read in this file, because the read table function does the exact same thing, and it's much easier, much faster to use the read table command. But in some cases, the text files have some quirks such that read table can no longer read the file, and then you can program your own script by using text scan to read in sort of to handle the particular aspects of your data file.